Name another game that has been running as a live service for 20 years or more straight that has had an impact like EVE Online. There are a few, but it's a smaller handful. Let me know your thoughts on that below, but here's what I think about it. EVE Online at its core is all about the players, but perhaps more than that is about player-led corporations. It's a theme that takes me back to the first days of EVE. Now, I began playing EVE Online back in 2003, and I pretty quickly set to building a small corporation. A few newly found friends I met through the EVE Online community, alongside some other people I knew from online and other forums. Now, this was 20 years ago, long before social media and the mass adoption of cell phones. In many respects then, online communities were nascent, but I'd argue that gaming communities fueled a lot of the later online growth that eventually turned up. EVE Online evolved over the years, forming many offshoots, one of them EVE Vanguard, the latest iteration, releasing very soon. Now, this video is sponsored by CCP, and my thanks to them for that. Do check out the links in the video description below. So from the early visions of player-led corporations with EVE Online, which were at the time revolutionary features, but somewhat limited in scope back in 2003, that all grew into the behemoth that we know today. Recently, CCP have discussed how they plan on achieving the exact same thing again, that massive growth with EVE Vanguard, a multi-year journey that will see the game expand and also continue to strengthen ties with EVE Online. So what exactly is EVE Vanguard, and where is it headed over the next 5 years? CCP have been discussing this specifically, including references to that time frame. So EVE Vanguard is an MMO FPS, a first-person shooter set in the rich universe of New Eden. But it's not just any shooter, it's designed for players who crave a more complex, deeper and connected experience, for those who want their actions to have a lasting impact on a shared universe. EVE Vanguard then aims to deliver just that. The game puts us in the shoes of the Vanguard, allowing us to interact with the world through a human lens, gun in hand. But it's about more than just running and gunning. That's not just the scope, there's more to it than that. It's about preparation, decision making and mastering intricate systems. It's an FPS that caters to various playstyles, rewarding players who invest time in understanding and manipulating its mechanics. So one of the most exciting aspects of how EVE Vanguard will connect into EVE Online is the idea of its single fast universe, and this is something that CCP have been trying to achieve for many years at this point. If you look back over the years, they have tried many times with various different games, Dust 514 being one of the most popular ones. They've also had a lot of video trailers emphasising this fact. It's something they don't want to give up on, and it seems, well, they're getting very closer to really achieving this. And it's something I've always wanted to see, the idea of a single vast shared universe where actions in one game affect the other. It's something that could, well, perhaps redefine what we expect from MMOs. Vast corporations then, both new and old, are going to span across both games. And the plan is that they will have impacts on both games. Now, in EVE Online, we've always known that resources are everything. The legendary economy of New Eden in EVE is built on this relentless pursuit of materials, wealth and power, and who among us hasn't heard of some of these stories? The plan is for EVE Vanguard to mirror this, but on a different scale. Whilst captured is up in space, think in terms of capital ships and massive fleets, the Vanguard down on the surface of planets are focused on ground-level assets such as suits, guns, modules, and perhaps a little bit of contraband. But even though this seems on a much smaller scale, that something small found on a planet's surface could still have a massive impact when used strategically up in space. Similarly, aid from a capsuleer up in space, no matter how minor it seems, could turn the tide of ground skirmishes and ground battles. But this flow of resources and influences between EVE Vanguard and EVE Online is something that could well be a game changer if CCP manage to achieve their goals here. It should create a somewhat interesting system where every player's actions could potentially have an impact in one game or the other. So this is something I'm personally very curious to see how it pans out. After all, as we've discussed, EVE Online has led to a lot of stories out there, many of them driven by player-created chaos, something that EVE Online is infamous for. And this hopefully should manifest down on the ground in EVE Vanguard. The same type of alliances, rivalries and political manoeuvring we've seen in space could perhaps play out down on the planetary surfaces. So yeah, as was obvious from my very first days and very first moments in EVE Online, it's all about the community. It's why I dove straight in to form that cooperation with the new friends that I'd made back then. But what does this mean for Vanguard? Vanguard's obviously a very different type of game, so how will it actually play? Well, it's aiming to be an open FPS with a variety of different experiences and different environments, much like a traditional MMO. Whether you're into competitive PvP, resource gathering, PvE encounters, or just exploring the environments with friends, there should be something here for you. Now, as you can see on the screen, I have got some footage here. I have been playing this through the various different playtests, and I have seen it evolve over the past few weeks. And yeah, whilst it's still relatively bare bones in the sense that there's still some more content to be added and a few extra things that hopefully make it along the way, there's definitely those elements here of choosing between or mixing a PvP, resource gathering, PvE, or just simply exploring. There's a good mix of different activities. You can just deploy down to a planet and choose what you want to do, or even choose insurgencies and get involved in a little bit more action. Now, the central loop involves deploying to planetary surfaces, engaging in combat, scavenging and completing contracts. The goal here is to earn, find or steal resources that feed into power, allow you to upgrade and manufacture, sell or even trade. It's about growing your Vanguard's strength, its influence, and perhaps even its infamy if you're able to do that. So as players will have a variety of guns here, lots of them in fact, and whilst the playtest have showcased some really nice customization with the single weapon so far, there's going to be many different weapons, so it'll allow players to tailor loadouts or preferred playstyles. Upgrading suits is also going to be a thing, tinkering with subsystems and experimenting with modules. These are going to be keys to succeeding, much like upgrading your ships in EVE Online. And as you might expect, with the world of this complexity, CCP does have a clear design philosophy, which is rooted in 3 different questions as they present this. When it comes to weapons, they always pose the questions: who made them, what do they do, and how will they be used? The principles that CCP use to guide their design philosophies when it comes to these weapons. So the question, who made it? Well, every weapon in Vanguard is manufactured by a faction or an empire within New Eden, and each with its own distinct culture or technological signature. Whether a weapon is sleek, precise, or heavy and brutal, its origins influence its visual style and the materials used in its construction. So it's a level of detail that hopefully should really connect it to the lore and give the players some connections to that game world. Weapons also designed with a function, quite obviously, but what do they do? Well, they kill. But more than that, it's about whether or not they have precision strikes, whether they're heavy firepower, or whether they like to control the battlefield with chaos, just unleashing massive devastation. So understanding a weapon's function helps assign it in an appropriate manufacturer. Just like in the real world, different corporations specialize in different methods of constructions, and this specialization is reflected both in the look and the feel of the various different weapons. So what about combat? Well, aside from a PvP, there's also the PvE elements. We've got drones as well as the militia. Now, the militia is an organised group of survivors that are native to the various different planets. You'll encounter these as you undertake your various different objectives on the planetary surfaces. These militia are AI-controlled enemies, so they're NPCs. Now, in my experience with these so far, even though this is an early playtest, they do have some pretty good AI, the militia that is. They're quite capable of pinning you behind cover, whilst another one of their team pivots round behind you and tries to shoot you from behind. They're also quite capable of trying to pressure you into manoeuvring into the open. So yeah, the AI here seems to be pretty good even in the early days already. Now, the militia are all about ambushes. They get different types of ambushes as well. There's trap ambushes, roaming ambushes, camp ambushes, and trapdoor ambushes. So with trap ambushes, it's here that players will go over a tripwire or something like that, and this will trigger the militia squads to appear and engage with you. When it comes to roaming ambushes, these are exactly how they sound. Militia squads roam at the map, and these will attack both players as well as other NPC squads. Camp ambushes are pretty interesting because they lay in wait around strategic locations. You may be looking for a particular type of resource and find they are guarded. And then there's trapdoor ambushes, which when triggered send some rogues after you. Now, interestingly, the militia will loot if they kill NPCs, or if they kill players, they will take the loot that's dropped. although you can get this if you killed those NPCs yourself. They in turn will drop that loot. And drones, now these have a significant role, and over the various different playtests I've seen their presence increase over the time. Most drones are airborne, and that means they can attack you from pretty much any angle. Each drone variant is built with a unique purpose in mind, that means they could be just defending certain objects, or they could be hunting you down as they roam around. Similar in a way to militia Zen, but working in a very different principle. So quite a lot there to unpack, and it's pretty clear to see how far EVA's come over the years. And with the new iteration here with the Vanguard, it does represent somewhat of a new step, one that's been tried before, but one which hopefully with Vanguard is going to work out very well. What the game looks like in 5 years from now is open to anyone's guess, but it certainly could be impacted and affected by player interactions. So for someone who's been part of the EVE universe for 2 decades now, it's really interesting to think about the possibilities that may come from Vanguard and the interconnectedness between the two games. There's a premise which I'm really keen to see pay off, and something which I'm really glad to see a CCP trying. Thanks for watching this video all the way through. Do check out the other video linked on the screen right here. I'll catch you all next time, and do take care.